I hope everyone is interested in this topic because I got a ton of stuff planned for you guys. Those of you who've had me in an actual live class or have basically talked to me through Zoom before, you know that I like to talk. So please bear with me. And this is a subject that, quite honestly, has always intrigued me. I was part of a large scale podcast for about 5 years called New York Cine Radio, which was then kind of morphed into another podcast, which is called VHS Massacre. We got 3 documentaries currently surrounding that whole topic of the podcast and content creation. You can find them all on Tubi. Shameless self-promotion. For those of you who are interested in finding out a little bit more about the heyday of VHS and about the podcast that we had kind of surrounding this. As I said before, podcasting for me has always been a really interesting topic. I kind of got into it as probably close to 10 years ago. It was a group of guys who I worked with who, we were all kind of, just regular schmoes at the job. And we decided to have a podcast. So it was our way of actually getting out of the house that one day per week, kind of sit in a room and just talk about all the nerdy stuff that we were kind of into. Horror movies, comic book movies. As you can see, I'm a big comic book Batman fan, all the Marvel stuff. So for us, that was what our podcast kind of initially kind of generated towards. So I'm going to scale this lecture, talk, workshop a little bit more towards the journalism students or students who are interested in journalism. But the topics that we're going to talk about basically stretch across all genres. So if you're doing, a sci-fi podcast or a sports podcast, no matter what the podcasting topic is, the stuff that we're going to talk about today applies directly to it. So if we don't have any issues, is it okay, Ivan, if I share my screen?
Yes, you're all good to go, James. And
Okay.
I'll keep letting in people in the meantime. And if anybody has
Do you want me to hold off? Do you want me to hold off or?
well, it looks like we've got 11 total at the moment. And we're about 7 minutes in, so I feel like we might as well get started. In the
Okay.
interest of time, and like you said, there's a lot to cover. And everybody just feel free to pop questions into the chat. And there's going to be a Q&A at the end. So take it away, James.
Cool. So let me jump over here to which screen do I need? Entire screen. There we go. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Podcasting for journalists. This is pretty straightforward. This is not even a real image. This is something that was AI generated. I generated off of one of the AI image sites. And we're going to talk a little bit about AI as well, because there's a lot of faculty professors who don't like it. I absolutely love AI, and I leverage it in just about all of the type of content creation that I'm interested in. So a little bit about me. I've been in CUNY now for going on close to 35 years. No, excuse me. I've been working within the field of information technology. I've been at CUNY close to 25 years at this point. I earned my MPS in interactive telecommunications from the Tisch School of the Arts. And I've basically been trained in a lot of the cool technologies and all the stuff that essentially surrounds the internet and a lot of the digital content creation that we're talking about today. Today's agenda, we're going to talk about choosing a podcast concept, selecting podcasting equipment, the software that you're going to need for a podcast, regardless of what the topic is. We're going to talk about audio versus video podcasting, because this is also something that's changed initially over the last couple of years. When I first started doing this, it was primarily mostly audio. And depending on the focus of what your podcast is, one may work better for your concept than others. Then we're going to talk about hosting platforms. Once you've actually created your podcast with the hardware and the software, How do you get it up and viewable to the rest of the world? So we're going to talk about the hosting platforms. And then once it's hosted, how do you go about promoting it? Everybody and their mother has a podcast now. So it's really easy to do. But the problem is that because there's so many people doing it, how do you get yours to stand out so people can see you, that you can basically get your message out to the world? And for those of you who are really interested, how do you make a little bit of money off of it? We're going to also talk about that aspect of promoting it on social media, and also how to go about monetizing it if that's something that you're really interested in. And then I'm going to leave some time towards the end for questions and answers, if that's good. The most important thing for you to do is to choose a concept. Like, what is your podcast going to be about? Once you have all the software and stuff like that, I know it's really easy to basically kind of pick up and just start talking. Most of those type of podcasts don't really become sustainable. So you really need to think long and hard about what are you looking to achieve, and what's the overall concept. So I want you to identify your strengths. What are you good at? Are you good on camera? Are you good speaking? Do you have a decent speaking voice? Are you best in an audio platform, or are you cinematic enough that you're okay for video? I had an old friend who said one time, he was kind of mean. He said that I had a voice for audio and also a face for audio. In other words, he was calling me ugly, which is not cool. But anyway, you have to figure out where your strengths are. Are you a solo creator? Are you going to be doing this podcast with a group of people? Those are things in terms of building your team. What are your goals from a journalistic standpoint? What do you want to achieve with the podcast? Do you want to basically influence? Do you want to entertain? Do you want to educate people? These are all very important things to consider. Who is your target demographic? Who are you trying to reach? Is it the young? Is it the old? All of these issues, you should have a concept in your, or a picture in your mind of exactly who the type of person is who will be coming and viewing your podcast. Then you want to create content that person or that group wants and hopefully needs. So last but not least, you also want to determine your budget. How much money do you want to start with this? I'll tell you right now, when you're initially starting out, don't go crazy buying the latest and greatest high-end software or hardware. Start small, start inexpensive, and build up from there. Key things to consider before you get started. Your content plan. Content is king. People come to your podcast for the information that you basically are going to be providing, for either that or the people who you're going to be interviewing or the concepts that you're going to be discussing. So understanding what your plan is important. Also, what's going to be the name of the podcast and how do you describe it? I've scrolled through Apple Podcasts and a number of other podcasting directories and selected podcasts that I wanted to listen to, primarily sometimes because of the name, sometimes because of the artwork. Something about it caught my eye and it was easy for me to basically kind of connect with it. So thinking about the name, the description of the podcast, how do you describe it in a few sentences that would make people see that and automatically want to basically download it? Then you need to think about the format. This is kind of critical also, and this is something that a lot of people initially struggle with. Are you going to be a solo podcaster? I mean, one of those who sit in front of the mic like this and just talk about an issue. There are podcasts exactly like that. There are other podcasts where someone has pulled in someone to interview, and it's more of a give and take. The way that you approach setting these up differ somewhat, and you'll need different types of equipment or different type of workflow for both. Will it be an audio podcast? Will it be a video podcast? Will it be dual? You know, if you've seen any of the major podcasts in the last few years, I'm going to use Joe Rogan. I'm not a big Joe Rogan fan, but I'm going to use him as an example. You'll go on YouTube and see his video podcast. You can download his audio podcast. You'll go on TikTok. You'll go on Instagram and you'll see short reels or clips from his podcast. These are all ways in which he has kind of decentralized his content and spread it out. So this way, more and more people have an opportunity to see him on multiple platforms. And this is how you have to think in terms of marketing and getting your promotion or your promoting your podcast and getting it out to the public. We'll talk about how to go about that. I know that sounds like a lot of work, posting on, your podcasting platform, posting on YouTube, posting on Instagram. All of those can be done very simply and very easily if you develop the correct workflow. Budget. I talked about this a little bit before. Don't spend a grip of money right off the bat. That's a lot of podcasts are not sustainable, so you don't want to spend thousands and thousands of dollars, getting, $400 microphones, $2,000 mixers, DSL, one camera can basically run you $3 or $4 grand if you're not careful. So you want to make sure that you get exactly what you need starting off. And keep in mind, the most important thing is audio. People will watch bad video. We've watched bad video multiple times, grainy video and so forth. But one thing people will not deal with is listening to bad audio. So if you have to spend a little bit of money, put it toward the audio capabilities. Cool? We talked a little bit about marketing, getting it out there, marketing your podcast, utilizing social media, word of mouth. We're going to go over some of those aspects. And you want to make sure that the podcast is sustainable. In other words, you don't want to get to a point where, it's too costly to you on a personal level to continue doing it. Like it just takes up too much time or costs too much money. So it's helpful if you can find a way to monetize the podcast so it's bringing you in some revenue, so it makes it easier for you to justify continuing. It's a great time to create a podcast or any type of digital content. The software, hardware has never been easier to use. There's never been more distribution methods. There's never been a better time in human history for the average person to get their message out to the world. Let's talk about the equipment. Getting the job done, once again, without breaking the bank. Now, I'm a total gearhead. I'm going to admit that right off the bat. I buy gear constantly, much to the dismay of my wife and my kids. But I also buy a lot of stuff that I really didn't need to buy, to be quite honest with you. So I'm going to give you the benefit of my mistakes and my experience in terms of what you might want to think about starting off. Everyone in here should have a computer. I'm not going to get into it. It doesn't matter whether it's Apple, whether it's PC, doesn't really matter, as long as it's relatively decent and it's reliable. If you have to invest in more money, make sure that you have a lot of RAM and make sure that that it has a fairly decent processor and a dedicated graphics card if you're going to be using video. That's definitely one of the things I would recommend. But desktops are much more inexpensive than they used to be, and you can even get some fairly powerful laptops nowadays for not too much. I bought one for myself not too long ago. It was about $300. It was an older i7 Dell laptop that I picked up that was refurbished. I use it for probably about 80% of the stuff that I do. I also have a really high-end gaming laptop, but you don't need to spend $3,000 or $4,000 on a computer. Keep your computer needs as I won't say minimal, but you don't need to go overboard unless you're doing really, really high-end 4K video, and we'll talk about that as well. If you got to spend money on your audio, microphones. A lot of people initially, when they start, they'll utilize the microphone that's built into their laptop. Same thing with the camera. most of the time the camera and the microphones on those suck. There's no other way to put it. So buying an external one or having other options is definitely something that you should consider. Now, if you look at, like, once again, to use Joe Rogan, if you look at Rogan or a lot of the major podcasts, they'll have those big, huge microphones. And the one that he has is the Shure SM7B, which is a $400 microphone. So if you have four microphones for the interview guests and so forth, you're already in $1,600 just for the microphone. That's before anything else. So we're going to talk about the different types of microphones that you can get into. There's ones that are built in. There's ones that you can attach, the small lavaliers. And there's also small external mics, which is similar to the one that I have in front of me right now. These are some of the microphones. That high-end one I was telling you about, this is a $400 Shure SM7B, the really kludgy name. The one that I'm using now is the Samson Q2U. It's a USB as well as an XLR mic. And I'll talk about that in one sec. I have an extra one right here that I wanted to show you. This is the microphone. Let me kind of stop sharing the screen for a sec. Stop the share. So this is the microphone right here. It's built like a tank. It's very similar to some other microphones that you may have heard of, like the Audio Technica, I can't remember. I'm blanking right now. But bottom line, this is a standard mic. This will run you probably on a bad day, probably about $70 to $80. And it's the one that I'm using right now. And if my audio sounds okay, keep in mind, I'm not spending, $400 for this. The difference between what they call USB and XLR microphones, USB, all of us have USB on our computers, right? You plug in one cable, that small USB cable, and you plug it right into the USB on the side of your computer. This has the ability to do that. So I can go directly into my computer with that. But you'll see this big area right here. That's an XLR connection. The XLR connection basically allows you to have this big, thick wire and plug into a larger mixer. This gives you a lot more flexibility, this type of microphone, because you can use it either directly into the computer or a little bit more professional sounding ones. You can basically go directly, or for a more professional sound, you can go into an audio mixer that basically can enhance the vocals. The reason that this microphone works for me, it's a decent sounding mic, even when I'm using it USB, but I have an XLR connection on this. As you can see, the cable right there, and it runs into this large mixer that I have here that I'll show you in a few. Cool? The other mic that you see over here is also a USB and XLR. So if you're going to get a mic, I would tell you, especially starting off initially, try to get one that has dual purpose. The one that you see here, the Rode PodMic USB with an XLR connection, it's about $200. There are other microphones that are also out there. There's too many to go through, but I generally would say when you're starting off, go with one that has dual functions. The other thing I wanted to mention is that a single USB microphone going into the computer, directly into the computer, you're probably only using that with one person. If you needed to have like multiple guests, then using a USB mic becomes a little bit more difficult. That's why the XLRs kind of stand out. And you're getting, they're really kind of cool looking. There's all types of ones in terms of the way they look or whatever, but don't spend a grip of money on mics just yet. These are the mixers that I was telling you about. And these allow you to basically take that large cable and plug directly. Oh, wait a minute. Let me jump back into here. I forgot that I wasn't sharing my screen at that point. There we go. Can you see the screen again? Good?
Yes.
Okay. So these are the mixers. This is a small handheld portable one called the Zoom PodTrack P4. It's a small little, it's not too much bigger than a cell phone, but it allows you to connect four four XLR microphones directly into it. It allows you to get power directly from it to enhance and tweak the sound on the mic. The one that I'm using right now is this one over here called the Rode Procaster. This is, let me back up. The Zoom mixer will probably run you somewhere under $150, somewhere around there, 150 to 200, depending on the time of the year that you catch it. With all the tariffs and stuff going up, who knows? It's probably going to be somewhere closer to 200. But let's say from 150 up to about 200. And these are decent mixers that will last you a while. The one that I have over here, the Rodecaster, is probably one of the more expensive things that I've purchased. This is about a $700 mixer, but I knew I was going to do this for a long time. So I run all of my audio directly through this. I have the XLR mics. It basically has four individual inputs. So I can have four guests in this room with me, and each one of them has their own high-end XLR mic that can be processed, tweaked as we go along. There's a smaller version of this that'll run you about $500 called the Rodecaster Duo. These are, if you're going to be serious about podcasting, definitely invest in a decent mixer. And there's tons of options I can give you, but the two that I particularly like the most are these that you see here. I went with the higher end one because, like I said, I do lecturing, I do streaming sometimes, and this just offers me a lot of flexibility in terms of getting that great sound quality that people generally like. If you were going to be doing a video podcast, there's tons of options in terms of how you can bring or capture video on your computer. You know, there's people who use old school camcorders if you have one laying around. DSLRs or mirrorless cameras are another option. Neither one of those are particularly cheap. You can actually get camcorders pretty cheap now, but they're kind of fixed and they don't allow you a lot of flexibility in terms of the type of lens that you have on it. There's people who use action cams, believe it or not. If you have a GoPro sitting around, you can put the GoPro in webcam mode and actually use that. And the GoPros actually have, especially the newer ones, the GoPros, the DJI Action 5s, the Insta360, I can't remember the name of it now. There's a couple of the ones from Insta360. All of those have really amazing quality and are comparable in many ways to what you can use with your iPhone, that type of video quality. You can use an iPhone too to capture video and audio. What I'm using right now is the webcam that you see here. I don't know how my video looks to you. Hopefully it's looking decent. But this is a fairly high-end webcam. The one that I'm using right now is about $300, but there's two cheaper versions. One is the Facecam, just the Facecam Mark II, which is about $120. And then there's another one called the Facecam Neo, which is about $90. That's actually kind of good because I don't have to spend a ton of money. And there are other webcams that you can use. I have a number of like Logitechs. I'm not going to switch the cameras now, but you can pick up a bunch of these, and as long as you have decent lighting, you'll usually get decent footage out of this. So for example, just to show you what I mean, this is a high-end webcam, but if I turn the lights down, you'll notice that the quality of the video degrades pretty quickly. So lighting, a good camera and bad lighting will usually still give you bad footage. Bad camera and decent lighting, you have a much better chance of getting a processable, decent quality image. And that's what hopefully is what we see here. So keep that in mind. If you're looking to do video podcasting, these are some of the options that I would recommend. Worst case scenario, there's nothing that should stop you from basically creating a podcast. There's certain podcast providers that will allow you, that have phone apps where you can directly just kind of create a podcast directly from your phone. And if you pair that with a wireless mic, the wireless mic that you see right here is the DJI Mic 2. I have the Mic 1, the Mic 2. These are small little mics that you see here that you can essentially clip directly onto your shirt. There's a transmitter that you plug directly into the bottom of the phone, and it will transmit the audio directly into the phone that you have. iPhone, Android, doesn't really matter. And these come with two microphones, so you can have this for yourself and a guest. So this is a really decent way, low cost way, kind of, to get basic audio into a phone um, if you're really strapped for bucks. So keep that in mind. All right. Most modern smartphones and tablets will give you the ability to basically create a podcast. As I said before, lights are important. The lights that I have here are not high-end lights. I got three, because I'm doing 3-point lighting. I got 3 really low budget, probably these ones here about $15. They're the ones that like on the goosenecks. So I can kind of direct the light, and they're powered by USB. So directly I plug it into my the USB adapter off my computer, and I get power from that basically powers the lights. Low cost. I think for all 3 of them, I spent maybe $45. There's other lighting equipment that you can get, the larger soft boxes. If you have a studio that you're trying to basically utilize a dedicated space. When I first started doing this, the lights were crazy expensive. I'm talking about a lighting kit would easily run you over $1,000 without blinking an eye. I've seen lighting kits now with LED lights that are fairly powerful and that work really well. And if you can see here, that's what these lighting setups here are. Then you have like this green screen background. You can basically put a green screen down, have some lights, and then utilizing a green screen, you can actually create a virtual background to put you wherever you might need to be or want to pretend that your podcast is transmitting from. So these are some of the options that you have for certain accessories. You have LED lights that you can put directly on your camera if you have a DSLR. The camera that I've been using as of late is this one here. Let me just stop sharing real quick. This is the DJI Osmo Pocket. It's has a gimbal built into it. It has a 1-inch sensor, so the image quality is immaculate. It pairs directly with those mics that I was showing you because it's made by the same company. This will run you about $700. You don't need something like this. You can basically, like I said before, I've used like not webcams. I've used action cams when I've done remote interviews. This is the one that I use now just because it's just really works really well. And it automatically pairs with the external mics, those little ones that I was just showing you. So I can put these on a guest, have one on myself, set this camera up, and the camera has a gimbal that basically follows you. So it has tracking. So I can set this over in the corner and then basically interview someone, and the camera will literally follow the person who's talking. So there's a lot of great stuff that's here. The prices on all this may change. This here will run you probably like around close to $300. There's a cheaper version that they have that'll run you about $200. I love this camera here. Some of the other things that you might want to definitely pick up for a podcast, and keep in mind, you don't have to, these are all kind of like nice things to have, but these are not things that you absolutely have to have by no stretch of the imagination. So as I said before, these are nice things to have, but they're not absolutely critical. You can do without them. So you don't need a $700 camera, DSLR, or even really, really high-end lights. You can get by with mini tripods or basic tripods, and long as you have decent light, whether it's from the ceiling light, whether it's natural lighting, as long as you light the scene correctly, your podcast can look decent if you're going to be doing video. Let's talk about some of the software. And this is where it really gets kind of interesting because there's some great software that's absolutely free. The two that I essentially use for a lot of podcast editing, there's three actually. You don't have to go, a lot of people talk about the Adobe Creative Suite, but that suite is kind of expensive. Even at student pricing, I think it's something now like around $19 per month, or maybe $20 per month for $30 per month for students. I think it's something like 50 to almost $60 if you don't have a student discount, which in the grand scheme of things is not a crazy amount of money, but if I don't have to pay it, I don't want to. And there's some great open source and free options that you can use. The one from a video perspective that I've been using as of late is this one called CapCut. CapCut is made by the same company that basically owns TikTok. I've been using this probably for like the last 12, maybe 18 months. Excellent piece of software that they keep improving upon, has great AI features built in terms of basically transcribing your video, in terms of video effects, having multiple templates. So getting content up or for a podcast or editing it is really, really easy and nice. Canva is another one in terms of creating artwork for my podcast. There's a ton of templates that they have, whether the podcast is for, on a standard podcast or whether you're going to be doing a video podcast. There's tons of templates that are free that you can use to get your program, your podcast, your channel up and running. These are two absolutely free ones. Other programs that you may have heard of for audio production, purely audio production, is this one called Audacity. Audacity's been around now for at least a good 15 years, I would say. Totally free, basic interface. It allows you to record directly into your computer and capture vocals. It's usually better for single podcasts, whereas one person kind of talking. You can bring multiple channels in, but you have to work around it a little bit more. It's not the easiest in terms of that. But it's great for editing basic podcasts, and it's 100% free, and it runs just about on everything. I haven't had a computer yet, even really old ones, that Audacity couldn't run on. If you're an Apple head, GarageBand is definitely an option. It has built-in podcasting features. It's been around. You can create music within it for royalty-free music for your podcast in itself. That's always a great thing too. Talking about royalty-free music, you can find some of that on Canva. You can find that on Pixabay. There's another one called Incomputech that's run by a gentleman by the name of Kevin MacLeod. It's been around for a while, and these are all 100% totally royalty-free. In Computech, I think you just have to you have to credit them as somewhere in the liner notes that you've used their audio or their music for the site. But there's tons of places for free music. So if you're not a musician, you don't really have to stress about that. These are just some of the examples. We talked briefly about the commercial options. They're very expensive. They're good, but they're expensive. Audacity is the program that I was talking about before. It's an open source audio editor. It's in multiple languages. It runs on Mac, PC, Linux. It's cross-platform, and it's been around for a while. CapCut, I mentioned before, it's owned by the company who did TikTok. It's growing. The only hesitancy I have about CapCut is I don't know if you've been following the news, but they're constantly going back and forth about shutting out TikTok out of the U.S. And if that's the case, CapCut may go also. So there's other options as well. DaVinci Resolve is a professional video editing program that they offer a free version that's pretty good, really good actually. The only problem with DaVinci is that it's a high learning curve. The learning curve for that is a little on the higher side. CapCut, Audacity, all of these other programs are very easy, very beginner friendly. Which one should you choose? We talked about the equipment that you would need for audio. We talked about the equipment that you would need for video. Which one should you choose? My answer is both. To do a Rogan, start with the audio. Focus on the audio piece first. I'm going to show some other software where you can record audio and video at the same time and then export out just the audio for your audio podcast or have your video for your video podcast. And the reason why that's great is because you cover both of those at the same time. So it's not like you're doing it twice. It's you capture it and you basically cut out what you need. Having some of these other programs that we're going to talk about in a second also will allow you to take some of the video and take small chunks of that for short form video for like Instagram, for TikTok, for YouTube shorts, Facebook shorts, all of those that are there. So this will allow you to basically push your content out on multiple platforms to market it better, to get your podcast seen, and so that people know who you are and the type of content that you're producing. You can leverage it on social media to the hilt. These podcast editing software that I was mentioning, where you basically record audio and video and can send it out in multiple ways. The first one I'm going to cover is called StreamYard, and they all have free options that allow you to basically try these out, see if the one works for you and your particular workflow. StreamYard allows you to live stream to multiple platforms. So if you have a podcast or an interview that you want to send directly out without editing, and there are those who do that, you can basically stream it directly live to Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, you name it. There's tons of options for this. And as I said before, there's pluses and minuses with all of these. This one, the StreamYard, on the free plan, it kind of maxes out at 720p, not even 1080p. So the quality is not the greatest, but it's free. So sometimes you got to take what you can get. Descript is one that's basically come around as of late. Descript's, and I haven't used this one personally. I've used StreamYard. I have not used Descript, but everyone that I know is talking to me about it, saying that if you're getting into podcasting, audio and video podcasting right now, this is one of the programs to absolutely use. This allows you to, as long as you have your camera, your computer, your microphone, you really don't even need a true studio. You can basically, here's the strength with this program, is that this is good for remote interviews. Some of the ones that we talked about previously, you're kind of expecting to have the people in the same room. But imagine now you want to interview someone who's in another city or across the country or in another country. A lot of people people have used Zoom to do that. The problem that I have with doing like Zoom interviews is that the quality usually is compressed and it looks like crap and it sounds like crap when it's played back for the most part. Not that really kind of thick, rich podcasting sound. The person that you're interviewing may be on a bad internet connection. They may be buffering or stuttering. That can be an issue. With some of these programs, I think Descript in particular, and definitely Riverside, which I'm going to talk about in a second, what actually happens is that the person records the video on their end, and then once the podcast is over, it's uploaded. So they'll upload theirs. Since it's local to them, there should be no problem in terms of buffering. You'll get the best quality, if that makes sense. Same on my end. What happens is it's uploaded to the service, whether it be Descript, Riverside. What happens at that point is that it kind of matches them together, creates an audio file that has the best quality, and then allows you to download it and then transmit it to wherever you want to basically transmit it to. So, and that's great for remote interviews because you have a lot of flexibility. What Descript also has not only editing built in, audio editing built in, but it has automatic transcription, it has voice cloning for corrections. It all the things that I've seen with this and heard about it, this is probably something that I would try. And once again, there's a free option that gives you, I think, 2 hours per month, the free option. And that's something also you need to think about is like, how long is your podcast going to be? So if you're doing like, a podcast a week, 2 hours might not be enough, depending on how long it is. But if you have like short 30-minute podcasts, you might be able to work it through. Cool. The other one that's worth taking a look at is called Riverside. And this specializes in really high-end audio and video quality. Allows you to basically record up to 4K in terms of video, really high-end audio quality. And each of these platforms that we've talked about have a different focus and different limitations, different strengths. The old school one that I would basically recommend is called OBS. That's if you wanted to record everything locally. And I use that mostly when I'm here at home and I have people in my quote unquote studio. I'll use OBS to basically do recordings of the of the podcast. And it allows me to do audio, it allows me to do video. It's available for Mac, PC, Linux. It's been around for at least a decade. It's extremely popular. And there's a ton of plugins that are available for it. So you can really make your content. This is what most of the streamers, if you looked at any of the Twitch streamers, this is what many of them use in order to curate their content. And you can, the difference between streaming and, podcasting to a certain extent is just almost like when does it go out? Streaming goes live, podcasts to a large extent are mostly edited. But you can work it however you want. I use this a lot for editing static content. I don't do as much live streaming as others. If you want to figure out which one to use, really quick and dirty, StreamYard is best for live streaming. Descript is best if you want to have AI-powered editing, audio and video. Riverside has the best if you're one of those audio files or video files, and that's the most important thing to use to have really, really crisp audio and really crisp video. Riverside is the way to go. Now let's talk about once you've created this podcast, it's hosted, you've edited it, you've put the file together. How do you get it out to the world? You need to get a podcasting host. These are 5 of the most well-known ones. All of them have different strengths, different weaknesses. I'll say this, I haven't used all of them. I've used Podbean. I've used the one for Spotify, but Spotify, it used to be called Anchor. And then Anchor was bought by Spotify. Anchor was 100% free. It had a ton of tools, basically allowed you to do everything directly within the application itself off of the website. Same is true to a certain extent for Red Circle. Some of the differences, let me back up. Buzzsprout, there's these 5 that are here. You have Spotify, Podbean, Buzzsprout, Red Circle, and Acast. There's more podcast hosts out there, but these are the ones that are most well known. I've used Podbean. Podbean it's a fairly strong, decent podcasting platform, but there's limited storage and bandwidth, but it's decent for beginners. So I think overall, I think you get something like, I don't remember offhand, but bottom line, you get like, maybe a couple of shows that you can upload for free on Podbean. And then I think after 90 days, whatever podcasts are there kind of disappears. You can kind of overwrite them. So if you're trying to build up a list of like 20 podcasts, you're not going to be able to do it with the free programs, with some of the free programs. You're not able to do it with Podbean. Um, you can do it with Anchor. You can do it with Red Circle, and you can do it with Acast. Buzzsprout gives you 2 hours of uploads per month. However, the episodes expire after 90 days. And I believe the same is true for the free version of Podbean. You can try all these out. I'll show these, or I'll forward the slides from this to Ivan, so he can hopefully disseminate that to everyone who's essentially came here today. Or you can reach me directly and I'll send it to you, whichever works. Cool? To do a little bit more research on this. We talked about marketing and promoting your podcast once it's up, once it's published and on one of the podcasting sites. Let me back up. One that I didn't mention that I really should is that YouTube actually has podcasts. The difference with YouTube podcasts is that you don't get the worldwide dissemination to other podcast directories, such as Spotify, such as Apple Podcasts, such as, I'm blanking on these now. The one for the Google Podcasts, you don't get easy dissemination. You're kind of stuck in the YouTube ecosphere, which can be good and bad, but if you're trying to reach the widest audience possible, you might want to use a combination of the two. Do YouTube as well as some of the other more traditional ones like Podbean, Spotify, or Buzzsprout. Promoting your podcast. I'm not going to go through all of these because we're running out of time, but these are a list of ways in which you can promote your podcast. You want to optimize it for search engine optimization, whether it be on the podcast or whether it's on YouTube or whatever platform you're on. That means making sure that you use keywords to describe the content of the podcast, and search for keywords that are basically trending. Leverage social media. Create smaller segment videos or audio files and disseminate those on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, you name it. Create a YouTube channel and market your podcast on there. If you're using video, or even if you're just basically using audio. I'm not a big fan of just audio on YouTube, but if you got video, I would definitely recommend it. Talk to other podcasters, people who have successful podcasts. See if they want to come on your show. See if you can get on their show to promote yours. Try to build an email list of people who are coming to your podcast. And that's one of the reasons why it might not be a bad idea, in addition to hosting your podcast, is that you also develop a website where you can capture some of this information all together. Websites are still a thing in 2025. They're still around, and they can be helpful. I know everyone is about the apps now. You just use apps, but you can still leverage a website to curate a lot of create a community, create a way for you to directly connect to the people who you're interfacing with. Submit your podcast to all the directories. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher, there's a ton of these directories that are out there. Encourage, interactivity with the people who listen to it. If you have comment section, engage with the people who are coming in and commenting on your content, whether it's good comments or bad. interface with them. That's it builds a little bit of trust because people then know this is not just a generic site that people are, there's someone behind this. We can talk about, we talked a little bit about online communities, using paid ads. As your site starts to pick up, you might be able to get sponsorships or people on certain platforms. They're easier to monetize than others. Like Riverside, I believe, has a fairly robust monetization program. So these are all different ways of promoting your podcast. You should definitely have a website one way or another, even in 2025. It's a great way to tying all of your channels, all of your social media, everything together. You want to build a brand. You want people to know who you are. Once again, I don't mean to keep going back to Joe Rogan, but people know him. Whether you like him, whether you hate him, he's built a brand. And as a result, he can drive traffic in a lot of different places. You can tie all of this together. I'll send this out. This is the group of guys that we had the podcast with, VHS Massacre. All of the podcasts, previous podcasts, as well as the documentaries that we shot were there. So we use the strength behind this, or the gentleman behind this, Tom Seymour, who's kind of like he was the dude who was running the podcast. I was just one of the participants along with him. But Tom basically curates all of his stuff through his website. And as a result, if you want to find out anything about any of the old episodes, any of the new episodes that he's putting out, any of his content, all of his brand is basically centralized here. So utilizing this to promote podcasts and his brand is how he approaches it. There's tons of different ways to monetize it. I talked a little bit about sponsorships, affiliate marketing, developing your own merchandise through sites like Teespring. There's Cafe Press was another one from way back in the day. These are ways in which you can monetize the content, even if you're not making money off of YouTube or somewhere else. Cool? Premium subscriptions, all of these, you can ask for donations on Patreon or other ways. I've never been a really big fan of that because I don't want to say begging, but it's kind of like, you're reaching out, asking them to send you money. It reminds me of kind of like what is I can't remember I'm having brain farts now. Not PBS, but yeah, like PBS, they're always asking for money. And you turn around, okay? I've never been a big fan of that. Crowdsourcing, applying for grants, all of these are definite ways in which you can try to bring money in to make your podcast sustainable. I know I went through that a little bit quick, and I'm maybe not as in depth as I would have liked, but there's a lot of material that's here. I wanted to use this as a way to kind of start the conversation. So, I want to leave I'll stay as long as necessary, but to leave time for you guys to ask questions about any of the stuff that we've talked about. And I'll try to get these slides to you if that's something that you guys are interested in. Hopefully that was decent.
No, James, that was awesome. Thank you so much. I feel like I've learned so much in such a short amount of time. Honestly, I can't believe the hour flew by. But yeah, we're also totally down to stay for as long as we need to for questions. I actually had a question to start us off. So we're talking a bit about audio editing. I was wondering if you had tips for like manual audio editing. I typically use GarageBand. One of the things is you obviously want to avoid, I was walking down the street, things like that. Do you have tips for that, and what to cut out, what not to cut out, and also how to avoid audio clipping when you have to make a bad cut and the sound makes a clipping sound?
Okay, well, audio clipping, the one thing that I will definitely tell you, let's start with that first, because that's one of the easier problems to kind of correct. I would rather you record your audio too low than too high. So you can always boost the audio signal up to get more volume. But if, it's like those guys, if you're in New York, summertime's right around the corner, you've seen the guys who have like the $2,000 car, but the $40,000 sound system in the back of the car, and the car is rattling because it's just too loud, or they really don't have good, and the music is kind of, even if it's good music that you like, it's clipping, it's distorted. And here's the reason why. That's audio clipping. Once you've kind of crossed that threshold, you can't recover that quality back. So I'd rather, you monitor your audio, always do a test. And most programs, you'll basically, before you start recording, you'll be able to test. You'll see the audio levels. Definitely use the audio levels. You don't want the audio levels in the red. You want them either in the green, or if in the yellow. When it starts going into the red, that's when it's clipping, and that's when you have problems. The other question that you have in terms of editing out the ums and ahs or whatever, I'll tell you right now, just record. Even, especially when you first start out, don't stress about don't stress about that. You can fix that in post-production later on. The reason that you do that is you get nervous. People get nervous. They're not comfortable being in front of a camera, being in front of a microphone. We've all seen people who are very talkative, very articulate, and as soon as you turn the camera on, everything goes out the window. So don't stress about that. That's just something that, just expect that your first couple of podcasts are going to be crap. Just like the first time you do anything, expect it just to be crap. You'll get better over time. Practice it. I didn't mention also, when you're basically coming up with your podcast ideas, don't just come up with one before you launch your podcast. You want to basically have probably 20 or 30 really good ideas for a podcast show. You want to record maybe 3 or 4 of them before you release anything out. Cool? Because you don't want to get a good podcast and then you're then struggling and figuring out, okay, well, I got to do this again next week, and I don't have an idea yet. Have your ideas kind of banked. If you have trouble coming up with ideas, use Chat GPT, use this. There's a ton of different places to come up with ideas. I can offer. I see someone in the thing. Can I offer a part 2 or actually a demo? I'm up for it. I don't know when I'm going to be able to do that right now because we're in the middle of semester, but I'd definitely be willing to do a part 2 because I know this is a lot to basically take in. Just once again, shameless self promotion, but shameless promotion. There's a podcasting course at SPS. If you haven't taken it, the excellent instructor, definitely take a look at that. But I'd be more than willing to. Now I'm getting nervous. That's why I'm doing these ums and ahs. What was I talking about? This is what I'm saying. Okay.
Well, that's good. That's why we're here. We were talking about now we got the dialogue. We were talking about like a potential part 2, and then you mentioned that there's a podcasting course that's available at SPS.
Yes, thank you, Ivan. You helped me out when I started stumbling there. So there's a lot of opportunities for this. If you want, I can also send you some links to some YouTube videos. Believe it or not, there's some really good tutorials out there. And there's a ton of creators who, that's all they basically do is create tutorials on various subjects. When I started doing a little bit of research for this, I hadn't used Riverside FM, which was one of the services that we talked about. So I went and looked at what a couple of, reviewers, guys that I kind of trust, who I follow, and I saw what they were saying. Same thing with Descript too. I was just like, wow, this is something I should take a look at. Don't be hesitant to find your mentors online. If you don't have the money to take a course, if you don't have the time to take a course, don't let that stop you. A lot of this stuff, I probably shouldn't say this as a professor. A lot of this stuff you can learn on your own, though. I'm not going to lie to you. Real talk. I mean, I'd love for you to come take a class with me because it pays my salary, but you can learn some of this on your own. Any other questions we got?
Yeah, so we got a question from a little while back from Katerina. And she said she's interested in Notebook LM from Google. And she is part of the leadership in the AI club at SPS.
Okay.
She wants to know like your take on this for podcasting.
I haven't used it. I'm not really familiar with, to be honest with you. There's a lot of stuff, especially in AI. There's new platforms opening up left and right every time I turn around. So I will say this: I don't have a problem with AI, any of it. Whether it's basically to create, help you flesh out ideas, whether it's to help you flesh out text content, to rewrite or to structure different things. I don't have a problem with AI in the slightest.
Well,
And a lot of faculty will have issues with that. It's already out there. It's not going to stop. You as a content creator have to figure out what's the best way for me to create content quickly, efficiently, that's entertaining, that's factual, especially if we're talking about as journalists, that's factual, but that allows you to get the content out, and keep it visually entertaining, or audibly, whatever, that it sounds decent on your audio. I don't have a problem with AI. If you can find a different way to do something or more efficiently, why wouldn't you use it? I'm old enough to remember when teachers used to get pissed at us for using calculators in classrooms. Now, if you come into a math exam or a physics exam and you have a calculator, nobody bats an eye, right?
thank you.
These are just tools.
Yeah, I'm just mentioning it because this one is different because it literally create a podcast for you. You don't need no people, and it's so realistic. It's almost feel like death of the podcast to me. So I'm like asking because
Yeah. I got you there. There's videos that do the same thing where you don't basically you can't really tell sometimes whether is that a real person or So there's always going to be that. But the one thing I will say is this: is that those type of AI programs, as of today, have no heart. They can't really engage with people. They sound fine by themselves, but there's usually telltale signs that this is not real. There was one I was listening to the other day when the guy was talking about live streaming. I'm live streaming, and I knew that it was like, that's it's the computer, the AI basically reading it. They can't tell the subtle difference between live and live. They're spelled the same way. Just sometimes also the intonations in the voice. There's really not a human behind it. And this is why, from a journalistic standpoint, this is why I don't think it's going to get rid of stuff. But for those who are interested in doing pure journalism, it's who are you interviewing? People tune in because, there's an interesting person behind the microphone. And until we get to the point where people don't matter, and maybe we're getting to that point, I don't know. I hope not. I'm really scared about the future of this country. But until it gets to that point, people still matter. But I do hear you, Katerina. I've seen videos that people have created that, I worry about my friends who do music. I worry about my friends who do graphic design. I worry about my friends who do a lot of different fields. You just have to figure out a way. It's out of the barn. The horse is out of the barn. You're not going to stop it. Try to find a way to make it work for you.
thank you.
Then again, I'm old. I'm 60 in a couple of months, and retirement is right around the corner for me. So I'm ready to go.
What was the-
I'm sorry. I know that's really not a nice thing to say, but one benefit to being old is retirement's right around the corner. What other questions do we have before forgot this is being recorded. This is totally going off the rails here at this point.
This
But
part we can call it off the
it's
record.
fine. I don't care. I don't care. I'm getting close to retirement.
Yeah, I mean, I get scared about AI and stuff like that, and like humans not mattering. I totally get it. Part of me wishes I could retire early. But we did have like just a couple more here. Oh, that's so funny. People like the comedy. Um, so someone wanted to know about like they got a oh yes, when you're doing audio podcasts, is it good to have images added to your audio? That's questions from Beatrice. I'm assuming she means like you didn't record video and you just have audio, but you're on YouTube, let's say. That's my guess for that question.
I guess. Stop and think about on YouTube. What do you usually you want to see? I've seen there's a number of faceless channels on YouTube where there's just images that pop up, and it's actually a great side gig. There's a couple of people who are doing they're like called Reddit stories. They'll get the content from Reddit, and they'll just sit there and read the Reddit stories that are posted. And there's one that I follow called Lost Genre Reddit Stories, and another one called Mark Narrations. And all they basically do is take stories that they found on Reddit and read them. And they read like soap operas. And I think both channels have well over 100,000 subscribers. So they're fully monetized at this point. There's other channels that have started to use AI to generate false stories similar to the stuff that you see at Reddit. And then they'll sit there and they'll read it, or they'll get an AI voice to read the stories. And I've seen a couple of them where, they have 50 or 60,000 subscribers, and those are monetized. And this is why I'm telling you that AI is not going anywhere. Figure out a way that you can basically make it work for you, you know. But I do. Are there channels or can you use images over top of the audio? Yeah, you could, but it'd really have to be interesting images. The images that they use on those other channels is usually the text from the Reddit thing. So for people who just want to read along, and I do. It's I don't want to hear the voice sometimes because it's an AI voice. So I'll just scroll through quickly to read the stuff. I'll do it on the train. I'll listen to it when I'm, outside, like running or something like that, because I try to move around a little bit even at 60. That's when for me, that's when I listen to podcasts. Is when I'm out of the house, or I'm in the car. I'll download or listen to it, and it's just a long trip, and I want to listen to something.
Yeah, same here with the uses of it. I'm rarely watching it. Like I'm also walking. I'm also, out there, and it's usually or I'm folding my laundry or something. Like it's rare that I'm like watching the podcast. So yeah, I definitely agree. Um,
I'm laughing because Nazreen basically she basically is talking about am I the she knows the podcast that I'm talking the channels that I'm talking about.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
these, so what you were saying, how you can like these are faceless accounts, but they have like hundreds of thousands of subscribers, and all they do is read old drama from these threads. These are the ones that come up the most. Like I'll see it on my Instagram, but man, like the drama on these. Like, and
Like the
what people are
dude
posting.
slept with his brother's fiance like a week before the wedding, and
Right.
just stuff like that. You hear and you're just like, man, this is better than General Hospital for those of you who watch
It's
soap operas.
shameless what people are putting online, whether it's real or fake, we don't know, but we're still listening.
But then
And
the bottom line becomes like, we want to hear a real voice, like you were saying, like you want the personality behind it. Even if that personality is not a big personality, you just instinctually want to listen. Like if anybody here, everybody's been a student and maybe tried to see if they could get a reading like read to them from an application, and it just does not work for me whatsoever. Like, a real voice is all my brain. Even it's not even about my intentions. It's like my brain subconsciously listening or not.
The one that I really like is called Mark Narrations, and I like it just because of the guy's voice. He is a very kind of like, he's very British, but he sounds like the kind of dude I would like to go out and just, have a beer with, just hang out with. You know what I mean? So, and that's the same with any of the video podcasts as well. And I don't think that's why I think AI is not going to replace it just yet. Just because we still want to make some type of human connection. And there's a coldness to AI when it's used in certain ways that really kind of disassociates you from it. At least me. I'm more than willing to do a second one of these or a demo. I haven't done a podcast in a few years, which is really a shame because there was a perfect opportunity during the pandemic. And I don't mean to bring negativity to the piece, but there were so many YouTube's channels and podcasts that blew up when we were all locked down because we were starving for content. We were starving for some connection. And those of us who made that dedication to producing the content during that time are doing really well now. I don't know if anyone in here watches Game of Thrones, but there was a character on Game of Thrones called Littlefinger, and one of his things was chaos is a ladder. In other words, he was saying is that, during times of chaos, there's an opportunity for you to basically level up. And I'm praying that we don't have more chaos coming, but if it does, look at it as an opportunity to get something good out of whatever negativity that's out here. That's all I kind of have to say on that. And I'll do as many workshops as you guys want to hear from me. I try to do this in my I'm teaching right now a social media class as well as a class on visual communication. I tried to do similar sessions like this during, synchronous sessions, but I think a lot of students just got too much stuff going on. It just didn't flow with them. I might try it again because I do like meeting with you guys or seeing your faces, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, but I guess we might be good here if no one else has any other questions. I mean, I feel like all of my personal questions were definitely answered. So I really appreciate that. I think you had a lot of great advice on AI and how to deal with it, regardless of what your feelings are about it. So that was really good.
And my just the last piece right here. Let me just share this one quick sec. You can reach me. My email address is james.richardson@cuny.edu. Reach out to me if you have questions after the session. I like hearing from students. I am one of those professors. I'll talk as long as you want me to. So if you have questions about this, ideas that you want to flesh out, if you're interested in any of the courses that I'm teaching, please reach out. Just let me know.